Okay, thank you.
Right. That is true. It's fine. White, I can see it. Yeah. She's behind.
Call the meeting to order and stand for the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to have a moment of silence for the victims of the fire in Maui and also for my mother-in-law who is in hospice care right now. Okay. So I wanted to make a statement before we begin. I'm just looking at the town's rules of procedures, and I'm going to read from them. The town council president should preside over each meeting. There's an excerpt from item 5, number A. Item 5, number C. Person who wishes to speak may only do so after being recognized by the presiding officer. So I'm asking people just to look for approval to speak, wait for approval to speak. And I think that would really be helpful in helping our meeting move along more quickly. So that's about it. And now we have a public hearing. So,
Mr. President,
yes.
motion to open public hearing for amendments to chapter 10.06 of the Codes of Ordinances.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Discussion and consideration of the proposed amendments to chapter 10.06 of the Code of Ordinances entitled Street Stop Signs. The amendment would add a stop sign on Gardner Road at Hog House Hill Road. Say that 3 times fast. Chief, do you have any information on that, or Karen? I don't know who's.
Chief's in charge of stuff.
Okay.
Karen's in charge of writing those. Essentially, the Richmond side of that intersection is the southbound side of Gardner Road, and it has been without a stop sign, and it's been a point of concern for people in that area. There's a stop sign on the Exeter side, the northbound side of Gardner Road, just before Hog House Road, the Hill Road, and there's a stop sign at the end of Hog House.
Yeah.
So this should just make it a complete 3-way stop for all vehicles in all directions.
Okay. Are they 2 questions. When I went down there to look at the situation, one of the stop signs was completely obscured by foliage.
Yeah, and that would be Director Barber that cuts those back. Actually, that's on the other side. That's on the other side. So we don't encourage vigilante justice when it comes to these things.
Right.
But if your bushes are overgrowing and they block a street sign, you know, a little self-maintenance is appreciated.
Right. Are there going to be stop lines as well on the roads?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. So I guess we have, do we have any action to take, or was this just?
You have to ask if there's anyone who'd like to speak on it.
Okay. Is there anyone who would like to comment on that on the council? Barring, that being said, is there anyone in the audience that has any comments that they would like to make?
Mr. President, move to close public hearing.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, you just need a motion to enact the event.
Move to approve the amendment as written.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Moving on, consent agenda. Is there anything anyone needs to pull?
Move to approve, Mr. President, move to approve consent agendas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Barring anyone from pulling anything.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Next is public forum. So is there anyone who would like to speak at the public forum? You were first. I can't see too good. My glasses are kind of foggy tonight.
Thank you.
No alias today, you're
Point of
still
order.
Bob Sayer?
I'm still Bob Sayer.
Mr. President, point of order.
We're again, we talked about just going through the president and so on.
Bob Sayer, Richmond. I wrote down all of the stuff that I need to discuss tonight, or want to discuss tonight. And I have copies for all of the council members if you'd like them, but I'm gonna read off the things so that I can get it done as quickly as possible.
Okay.
President Trimmer and members of the council, as a taxpayer of the town of Richmond for over 28 years, I'd like to address a very disturbing issue that continues to be brought up in council meetings by Councilor Colasanti. It is about the mistruths that he's spreading around our town, having the second highest tax rate in the state. As per the most recent 2022 state report of the municipal tax rates, Richmond had the 7th highest tax rate at the time. I have attached copies of the state report along with this written statement for your perusal. It disturbs me that Mr. Colasanti spreads these mistruths and gets the taxpayers all fired up about being the second highest in the state. The truth is that taxes in Rhode Island are high. According to the letter signed by you, President Trimmer, also attached, our tax rate for the 2023 tax season will be dropping to 1543 after our new property tax reevaluations. If the other communities don't have reevaluations this year, our tax rate would be 21st in the state in the 2023 tax season. Our property values have increased, and I believe that the assessed values are in the ballpark for what the properties are worth on the real estate market. My property increased significantly. Am I happy about it? No, but I would not want to live in any other community. Even at the 7th highest, you have to ask yourself, would I want to live in the other 32 communities for a few dollars less in taxes? Our school budget is the biggest tax drawer in our town. That is a fact. The residents that chose to move here and want to send their kids to the charter schools instead of utilizing our great school system are costing the taxpayers a big chunk of the budget by having to provide transportation for their choices in education. Perhaps the people who choose to live here and not use our schools should pay for the transportation costs. That would knock $1 million plus off our tax burden. Before moving to Richmond, our kids started out in Catholic school and we paid for their tuition as well as our taxes. I'll admit that I'm not a financial wizard, but I know how to read and decipher reports and realize that every town and city have expenses that require different rates in order to fund our local government, schools, public services, and so on. I also realize that certain areas are more suited for larger scale economic development that help counterbalance tax increases, while some of the more rural communities need to have more reasonable outlooks on economic development. Richmond is mostly a rural community and a drive-through town and needs to be looked at in regards to a reasonable economic development. With that in mind, I found it interesting that the 6 communities that had higher taxes than Richmond in 2022, North Providence, Johnston, East Providence, and East Greenwich, all had higher taxes and have a heck of a lot more businesses and economic development than Richmond, West Greenwich, and Foster, the other 3. Mr. Colasanti keeps mentioning Cranston when he boasts about their economic development. Cranston's rate will be higher than ours in 2023. I certainly wouldn't want to live there. Please, President Trimmer, put a stop to the mistruths being spread and take control of the council meetings. They are out of control. I have provided copies of the information that I have based this concern on and welcome any debate on the subjects mentioned within. Respectfully committed, Bob Sayer, submitted Bob Sayer, Richmond resident, and I left my cell phone. If anyone would like to contact me on any of this and discuss it, I'd be glad to. And if you'd like these copies, you can have them.
Thank you, Bob. Do you want to give one to Erin so she can put it into the? Okay, and the next speaker, please. Who would like to come up next?
Hello, everyone. My name is David Lally. I live on Agala Road in Richmond. I would like to bring to the attention of the public to a secret Holocaust that is occurring in every state of the nation, and yes, even in our town of Richmond. This Holocaust is sanctioned by our own federal government. It is happening in the privacies of people's homes. It is nonetheless terrifying to its victims, who are young mothers, unaware of the horror and pain they are about to experience at the death of their own child. The Holocaust I speak about is chemical abortion given in a regimen of pills now legally sold by pharmacies throughout the country, including Richmond, Rhode Island. Mothers are told by the health industry that a chemical abortion is easy, safe, and effective, just like having a heavy period. That is a lie. In an article written this February in the Washington Examiner, Kelsey Yeoman writes that the FDA chose to approve the abortion regimen without requiring reporting of its adverse side effects. Many women felt deceived, misled about the intense pain and the excessive bleeding that they would experience. They were also left in the dark about seeing their child's remains and of experiencing negative emotions afterward. Since the abortion regimen was approved, millions of children have been killed, along with 28 of their mothers, and over 1,000 women have been hospitalized in the emergency room. There are many testimonies to this anguish. A young woman named Amber wrote about her experience. Quote, "It was the worst pain I ever felt in my life. And secondly, I saw my baby. She looked so human already. I had no idea that my baby was so big after only 2 months." The organization Live Action has documented several other horrible experiences of young women taking the abortion pills. Salome said, "I saw the most heartbreaking thing I've ever seen in my entire life. I saw my child. It was the most beautiful thing that I ever created, and I destroyed it." Leslie said, "The chemical abortion was a violent, unnatural pain. Abortion clinics are sending women back to their own homes to partake in the death of their own child." And Tammy said, "It was not just a blob of tissue. I had given birth to what looked like a fully formed, intact 14-week-old fetus covered with blood. I scooped my baby out of the toilet."
Excuse me, David, 30 seconds. We're trying to keep the comment
Okay.
to 3 minutes. So.
"I sat on the floor with him and held him and cried." However you want to describe these experiences, one thing that cannot be said is that it is healthcare. In fact, if you take the words health and care and invert their meanings, that more aptly describes what a chemical abortion is. It is tragic, it is murderous, it is death and despair. Studies have shown that oftentimes it is negative influences of family and friends and pressure from society that leads a woman whose natural instincts is toward her child. Kelsey Yeoman wrote in her article, after having a chemical abortion, an overwhelming majority wish they hadn't and regret so much that they go to depression to sometimes having suicidal thoughts.
Okay.
It is the lack of support. I just want to finish one
Okay.
sentences.
Yeah.
It is the lack of support then that leads mothers who experience such anguish. As a community, we need to recognize this insidious Holocaust that is killing our young people in body and spirit. We need to speak the truth to them and warn them of the dangers of this chemical abortion and to support them in their natural instincts toward life. But that is what true healthcare is. That is what true love is.
Thank you. How many other people would like to come up and speak? I just want to try and. Okay, you're next then, please.
Catherine Calasanti, Richmond. I was alerted by a member of this community when the most recent town council agenda came out. This member of the community has followed town government for a while. I was told that an item on the agenda had a letter attached to it by one member of the public against a.
Excuse me,
Yes.
we're not allowed to discuss agenda items in public forum.
Okay.
If you
Then
want.
I will do it.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? Going once, twice. Anyone online? All right, sir.
Good evening, Marshall D'Ambrosio, Cranston, Rhode Island. I'm here tonight on behalf of Mr. Colasanti. I've known Mike for about 25 years. I worked with Mike on various committees in the city of Cranston with 3 administrations. I think the most applicable committee we can talk about is the Industrial Commission. It's an older name, but it had to do with redevelopment of Cranston, finding out what bottlenecks the city had, because at that particular time, in the early 2000s, we had a lot of new development coming in. And one of the aspects the city of Cranston had at that time was a building inspection department that was in tough shape. Archaic, people set in their ways, so on and so forth. And somehow we got tasked with the mission to find out what was wrong and see if we can suggest ways of fixing it. Mike took the lead on that. And what he did, he reached out to at least 3 to 4 different cities and towns, including the state building inspector, brought in different inspectors to our city. We had at least 3 or 4 different meetings. And we basically hashed out what was wrong with what were the defects with the system we currently had. Now, this took a long time to get done, and it didn't get done in a day. The report was submitted, recommendations were made. It was rolling upstream. You know something? It didn't happen overnight. It took a couple of years, but everything began to change. And the end result is the intelligent development of Plainfield Pike and also Chapel View and Garden City, where the retailers and developers went in there seamlessly with a new system, transparent, and it worked. And we're very fortunate to do that in Mike's leadership. Second commission I was put on with Michael was the, I hope I have the name correct, I think it was the Providence Cranston Investment Board. We were overseeing the allocation of grant money to various nonprofits and businesses. We were on the finance committee. I was on that committee for about a year. Mike, I stayed on for like 2 or 3 years. But he didn't get put on that committee because he knew a guy or he's a nice guy. It was his knowledge, his business experience, and his integrity. You're very fortunate to have him here. You may not agree with a lot of things. You may have different opinions. Just kind of work toward the confluence of ideas and figure out the solution. You got a good man there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Sir.
Don DeSalvo, live on 247 Carolina Newsnack Road. I work at Kenyon Industries, belong to a union there. And a lot of people that work at Kenyon live in this town. And we don't make a lot of money at Kenyon, but we like to live in this town. And when Mr. Colasanti and Ms. Sheehan were campaigning, they put on their campaign agenda that they were going to lower taxes. I voted for them. And I wish the people in this town would let them do their job. Okay, because if there's people in this town that don't have a problem paying taxes, God bless them. They don't have a problem. If they think the tax rate is fine, if they got $1 million in the bank to give to the town of Richmond, good for them. But that's a slap in the face to the rest of the people for them to make that statement here off the cuff. Who cares? Okay, there's a lot of people that are hurting in this town, even at the lowest tax rate that we have. Okay, I don't know about the dispute between these taxes and his taxes and all of that stuff, but all I know is people in this town are not going to survive if the taxes are going to be status quo. You got to upset the apple cart. The apple cart needs to be turned over. Okay, upside down, flipped over. That's my opinion, and there's a lot of people at my work that feel the same way, including my boss, who makes a lot more than I do, who lives right behind the Stagecoach house. And Mike is true to his word. He campaigned on lower taxes, and he is not one to flip-flop, not one to, as soon as you get in office, forget all that. I'm in office and I'm going to do my own thing and go with the status quo. We've had it with the status quo. It's a nice little feather bed everybody makes for themselves and gives themselves their own little raises and no changes. Nobody likes changes, but things need to change. Things need to change in this town because we don't let any business in that will help our revenue. and ease up the tax burden. We got solar panels galore after all of the people on Beaver River Road and everybody else campaign against it, and they get it anyway. We got all kinds of housing developments going in. There's been complaints against that, but they go in anyway. Why can't we get some revenue in this town to ease our burden? All right, I just want to say, you know, let the man do his job along with whoever else wants to join him. If Republicans are going to be Republicans, let them be Republicans. If I wanted to vote Democrat, I'd have voted Democrat. I don't need bait and switch stuff. And we're taking, you know, the people where I work, we're taking note of how Republicans vote. And if they vote according to party lines and according to the people that put them in office. You know, don't bait and switch us. We're not stupid. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone online? Okay, move on to the next agenda item. Reports. Oh,
Thank you, Mr. President. First item I have is a request for the council to approve a trailer for the emergency management. Our deputy director is here. He can answer any questions that you might have, but they did, they've been looking for a trailer for a long time. They've been talking about it. We did have some money left over from COVID funds, not the ARPA money, but the money that came before that. We did put it out to bid. We are recommending a company called All Pro Trailer Superstore for $26,000, $26,218.
Point of order. You gotta ask for permission. You gotta have him say, okay.
Nice.
yes,
Oh, no,
please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Sorry.
We're gonna have.
Oh, do you want to have
discussion?
Okay, but I'm sorry. Discussion, any discussion amongst council regarding the trailer?
With the COVID monies that are in the account, can somebody tell us how much is left after we make this expenditure?
That will.
That will
this-
zero it out.
Yeah, the memo lays that out, that we'd be using $21,141 from that would end those COVID funds, and then the additional $5,077 from what they call meds money from the state emergency.
Okay, yeah, because we didn't state if it was going to be zeroed out, and that was all the money that was left in the account. It just stated in the letter from you that it was the 21,1 and then the 5,077. So we're done.
Right.
No more money.
None of that first batch of money, but there's still ARPA money, it's a different bucket of money.
Right.
Any further discussion? Okay, so we'll vote.
Aye.
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 Okay, thanks.
Second item I have, we posted a bid in July for reclamation and paving of North Road. We did receive 5 bids, one of them being Amber, who is local. They bid $468,000. We have also worked with them before and been happy with them. And
They're not going bankrupt.
No, they're not. Scott has no concerns and they want to start fairly soon.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve Mr. DeAmber's bid.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, well, sorry, discuss, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay.
Next item I have is a discussion of the Juneteenth holiday. As you probably know, in this legislative session, a new state holiday of Juneteenth or June 19th was declared. I'm assuming you had a chance to read Karen Ellsworth's memo. But it appears that we need to add Juneteenth, because there is an indication in the legislation that the town
They've made it up.
fined for not following that. So my request is to advertise public hearing to change that ordinance.
Mr. President,
Yes,
motion to approve the authorization for the town clerk to advertise public hearing.
any discussion on this?
Mr. President, in the second paragraph of Karen's memo, it says that these state officials have told us at this time they have no plans to amend the state personal regulations to make Juneteenth a holiday for state employees. So with that being said, we kind of be putting the cart before the horse. And I wouldn't be in favor of doing this because the state hasn't even done it yet. What you said, unless it means something different.
That doesn't mean that they won't have to at some point. It just means that right now they're not very excited about doing anything.
Probably also have to negotiate it into contract.
Yeah, they're in a different situation because most of their employees are covered by collective bargaining agreements and most of ours are not. So it's a more of a process for them than it is for us.
May I respond back? to that,
Yes.
Mr. President? Okay. Yeah, with that being said, there's nothing legally binding for us to do this. So at this point in time, in this juncture, I would have to say that it's my opinion that we wait and see what the state does because there could be a lot of legal wrangling, and in the end, all right, after all this legal wrangling, it may not come to fruition. So I don't want town of Richmond to put the cart before the horse. And I don't want to be put in a position where, and I've heard this many times, that Richmond said yes, Exeter said yes, other towns said yes, and they use that to say on the state level, see, all these other towns are all in sync with one another. I don't feel we should be putting ourselves in that position. Let's see what the state does first with all their legal wrangling first with the unions and the collective bargaining units.
Could I?
Mr. President,
Sure.
Mr. President,
Just let Karen,
There, the section of the general laws that requires cities and towns to make this a holiday is a section that does not apply to the state. The statutory requirement is slightly different for the state. I
so
don't,
it's another unfunded mandate.
it is, that's exactly what it is. It's an unfunded mandate. I'm actually not really sure how the state thinks it's going to get around not making it a holiday. I think they're going to have to.
But they've already
they have-
mandated the towns to do
Yes,
so.
they have. They have told the town administrator that they have no immediate plans to amend the personnel regulations. But that doesn't mean that they won't have to at some point. But a different section of the law applies to cities and towns than applies to the state. And the section that applies to cities and towns says that if we don't make it a holiday, anyone who is required to work on that day gets time.
Right, Sam?
thank you. I was just gonna say the motion on the floor is just to advertise for public hearing. But also just wanted to say that there are some towns that take the day off, so it's moving in that direction. That's all.
Okay, so we had a motion and a second on the floor for the public hearing. And discussion, yeah, so let's advertise for a public hearing. So how do you vote? To advertise for a public hearing?
Aye.
Nay.
Aye.
Aye.
Next item I have is just kind of an announcement that the town's been notified that we're receiving a government finance officers association certificate of achievement for excellence in financial reporting.
Wow, excellent.
This is based on our annual audit, and I just want to thank Laura publicly for doing a great job keeping our finances in order and for reporting on it accurately and transparently. So thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Excellent. Great job, Laura.
And lastly, just an update on the Learn 365 grant. We were awarded that in the amount we requested, which was $50,000. And so Kate Schimmel, our Human Services Director, will be overseeing that program.
Excellent. All right, thank you. Chief,
Evening, sir.
evening.
Folks, how are you?
Good.
Everybody excited to be here? August, 4 hours before the fair. I am here to ask for the council's permission to rehire an employee we had for several years. He is one of the best police dispatchers I've ever worked with. For example, 2019, we had a shooting at Wawalone, a campground, and Nick was on the desk that day. And the calls that were coming in and the need to dispatch services and keep those things in priority is very difficult when you're under stress. Performed flawlessly. He left us in 2020 for Wesley for, better pay package, which is understandable. He was with us for 7 years. We currently have a full-time employee who is serving our country, Navy Reserves, gets deployed on occasion, Middle East. She just got deployed to Massachusetts. So fortunately, she's stateside, but she's out of state, unable to work with us. The military pays more than we pay her, so we don't pay her salary while she's working in the military, but we have a vacancy.
Right.
Nick has agreed to help us out with some of those shift fills, so I'm asking for your authorization to hire him back in a part-time capacity.
Motion to approve
Second.
hiring of Nick LaSalle as part-time police dispatcher.
Second.
All those in favor, any discussion?
Chief, quick question.
Yes.
He's just gonna fill in for the time that she's out.
He's a per diem employee,
Right.
so he's not entitled to benefits. He'll make the rate of pay he was making when he left, about $22.40 an hour for the hours that he works. Anything over 40 in a week would be overtime, but I don't know that it'll get that much because it's still full-time employment in Westall.
Yeah, so how long is her deployment gonna be?
9 months to a year, don't really know.
Yeah. Okay.
Aye.
Move to approve? Aye.
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 Awesome.
Thank you very much, folks. So the second request actually was born out of resident concerns. There's some families that live right on the corner of Carolina Newsnack and Baker Pines Road. Raise your hand if you know the intersection I'm talking about. If you look at it from the air, it looks like a 90-degree turn, essentially what it is. Baker Pines and Carolina Newsnack meet, and the Carolina Newsnack continues. It's a dirt road. This is the paved portion. There's a stop sign at the southern tip of Carolina Newsnack where the dirt portion meets the paved portion. Their request is to have stop signs put in north side of Carolina Newsnack and the southern side of Baker Pines to slow people down, to have them stay in their lane of travel. It's a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone, and if anyone has navigated that at 25, it's almost tough to stay. And the road's not lined. That makes impaired drivers feel a little more at liberty when they're taking that thing at 30, 40 miles an hour. I looked at some of our accident data. We have had, maybe 2 or 3 a year over the last 10 or 15 years of people leaving the roadway, hitting a utility pole, fleeing the scene, being drowned. Some, it's also a deer crossing. And they've avoided deer and gone into the woods, hit deer, and ended up on the side of the road. I think it's an area of concern. They are actually, I think at least one of them is on the call right now and would like to offer some observations.
Right. Are they requesting permission to speak?
Maybe Hans Measley? Yep, that might be his significant other.
Hello, thank you very much. Sorry, I spoke in the chat. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to speak today. My name is Ashley Douglas. Thank you. Thank you to the town council, and thank you, Chief Elwood, for your time. I just kind of wanted to echo Chief Elwood's point in that, we've lived on the corner of this intersection since about 2017. And in that time, we've had several close calls with near hits and near misses coming out of our own driveway. Vehicles are not able to see us. That intersection is also a bus stop for both the middle school, high school, and the elementary children. The buses kind of have to get creative in the way that they stop the vehicle to prevent cars from coming through. We've also, like Chief Elwood said, there's been several accidents, some of which have been so bad that they've shaken our house and woken us up at night. So we definitely appreciate the time and the consideration, and we would like to hope that at that intersection, 2 stop signs would slow vehicles down and become a deterrent and prevent any accidents. We're just thinking of the safety of our children. We don't feel comfortable with walking on our street.
Definitely.
Mr. President,
Yes.
motion to approve the town clerk to advertise for public hearing.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion on the council?
Chief, just a quick
Point of
question.
order. All comments go through the president. You gotta ask for permission first.
That doesn't apply when a member of the council is making a motion.
Right,
So,
so
yeah.
you have to say, Mr. President, and then make your motion. when you have-
No, you don't have to.
Right,
No, you don't have to.
So.
all comments go through him. That's what I will say.
So, please ask your question.
Chief, was there ever a thought of maybe putting in one of those yellow blinking? Because I've lived in town 35 years and very familiar, running that road, that when I'm running, they either cut the corner too close, and then when they see me, they all of a sudden brake hard, or they blow through the stop sign coming off the dirt part because they don't realize the stop sign is there. But the crucial point is on the paved part where they take that severe, like almost 45, like you said. Is there something?
Yeah.
Is there something maybe besides the stop sign, maybe before that you put in, because I've seen them before, where they put it blinking yellow and they have the arrow to alert people well before they get to that point.
So several years ago, forgive me, it's a blur. I want to say it was probably 5 to 6 years ago. I worked with DPW and we put in those chevrons, the black chevrons that indicated a sharp turn is ahead.
Yeah.
A lot of these people going off the roadway are from the area. They just are driving too fast for the conditions. So, it's sort of like the roundabout, which I know is not popular with some folks. Blinking lights don't stop vehicles. Configuration of roadways, a stop sign's not going to stop them either. It's going to take enforcement. But my professional experience is when you put a stop sign in, some people treat it like a yield sign, and that's not what I'm encouraging the public to do. Please don't mistake this. But what I'm saying, you have to stop. Complete cessation of movement means the vehicle doesn't move beyond that line to come to a stop. That said, I think it'll deter those wide turns people are taking. When you're running down the road, less speed at that intersection. I think it's worthy of public discussion and consideration. Those chevrons, they helped alert drivers who weren't from the area, but frankly, they didn't do much to slow down the local residents that are just treating that and driving to the comfort level that they have on that paved surface. We also have our variable message board out there. We've captured data over the last probably 3 weeks. It only captures the direction that it's facing or broadcasting to the public. So in this case, it was north on Carolina Nooseneck approaching Baker Pines.
I'm going to ask you what the
Actually, the average speed was about 26, which isn't bad, but as you're approaching a hairpin curve, and that board is essentially picking them up before they're rounding that corner. Some of the speeds were as high as 56.
Wow.
But you cannot navigate that safely unless you're in a vehicle like Daytona 500 and you've got some.
Or much was that?
Oh, Max, I bet you.
Okay, I don't have any photographs of
So,
that.
Um,
But I'll say this, the volume of traffic was pretty high. It was about 700 vehicles a day. That's in one direction. So you figure twice that for both directions.
the other
We
thing
have
is
cars maybe,
stop signs don't use electricity in a blinking light,
correct.
so it's more money.
There are some high visibility signs. You've got the red stripe below the sign. There are some things that can be done to enhance the visibility of the sign, but
Right.
this is a request that they made, frankly, taking a look at that data, looking at the accidents that we've had. It's a legitimate request, and the configuration of that roadway being almost a 90-degree angle. I don't think it's a bad thing to have people stop before they take a turn right or left.
Power lighting is really, really hard to do.
Very difficult to do.
Yeah, but you could do it at a higher. I mean, not that I know.
So, and I just want to thank the CPW. Chief Barber went out to the site with me to visit with the residents that were concerned. There was a lot of overgrowth of low brush right in that corner, so it compromised the visibility. They cut that all back. So thank you to him and his group.
Oh, great, thank you. So, I don't remember, did we make a motion? So we have a motion, discussion?
No, I'm sorry.
Mr.
I-
President.
I made a motion, I believe. On this one.
Okay, well,
Because we discussed.
all right, so that being said, how do you vote for holding a public hearing regarding? Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you very much. Laura,
Hi, good evening.
good evening.
So I just wanted to go through some of the statistics. There's been some discussion about tax levy and tax rates over the past 6 years. And I just wanted to clarify with some research that I had done. The tax rate compared to other cities and towns, I know Mr. Sayre was up here and he confirmed that fiscal year 23, we were 7th. I took the RIPAC property taxation report and only for the residential rate, because we have one rate. A lot of cities and towns have 3 to 5 different tax rates. I'm only using the residential tax rate. I'm going to say, like I said, a lot of towns have 3-tiered. Commercial and tangible are actually higher than the residential rates. So I'm, with that being said, we were 11th in fiscal year 22, 7th in 23. And now we also called every city and town for the 23-24, and we're 17th. We're actually tied for 16th, but we only have 1 tax rate. That ties with East Providence, which has 3 tax rates. The other issue is the tax levy increase over the last 6 years. And from fiscal year 18 to 24, the total tax levy is up 9% for those 6 years. I just wanted to also say that when you're using metrics of states and cities and towns, you have to understand the calculation and the discrepancies that could happen. You have to understand what other towns have, 3-tier, 2-tier. You have to understand if they've been evaluated, but for tax levies, there are many things that go into the consideration. So as we state statistics, we should understand what we're stating as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
President? Would you like
Yes.
to make a comment from that discussion here?
Excuse me?
Mr. Reynolds. Mr. Colasanti can go first. I just had a question.
Sure.
Yeah, Mrs. Kenyon is using different terminology that was used in recent talks about Richmond being the #2 residential tax burden town in the state. The tax rate is just that. The rate is at which we are being taxed. You're correct when you said that we were 11th. But tax burden adds the evaluations to the equation, which makes Richmond the 2nd highest burdened tax town in the state. And if you pull, anybody can pull this up, the RIPAC report shows that Richmond, and it's right here, I've got copies for everybody. Tax burden for residential homeowners with 319,000 in assessed value. Richmond is #2, and I've got it highlighted, and this is from a bipartisan committee, RIPAC, which has been around for decades and decades and decades. They compile all the information from all the cities and towns. And in their report that we have to look at this first and foremost is what our tax burden is. That means what the revenue we're taking in to what we're expending. That's the important thing. And over the last, from 2018 to 2024, like Ms. Kenyon said, we, pull my figure out here. So while the taxes levied has only gone up 9% in the last 6 years, municipal spending has increased 38% from the years 2018 to 2024. So now you say to yourself, where is all this extra revenue coming in from? You've got federal monies, you've got state monies. When you compile all that together, our spending, and the town budget was 5.5 million in 2018. The town budget in 2024 is $7.7 million. Just do the math. So she's correct in saying that it's only going up 9% in the last 6 years, but the municipal spending has gone up 38%. So then you got to think about where the difference and where did that money come from? And the tax burden is what every single one of you people sitting here tonight, that is the most concerning figure that you should take home with you and think about. And I've got copies for everybody. It's not information from me, it's information from RIPAC. So if you continue the discussion on where we stand tax-wise, you have to keep the discussion going to get to the true figure of where the town of Richmond is at. And Richmond is the second highest burdened tax town in the state. And that's not me, that is RIPAC. And I've got copies of this for everybody.
Laura?
So I do acknowledge the chart that he is referring to. The chart refers to what the tax burden would be on a home in fiscal 22 for an assessment of $319,000. It's one assessment times the tax rate. They used that schedule as what they considered to be the median assessed value of a home, I believe. Am I correct?
All the towns, so.
I know,
let's
but
compare
it
apples to
said
apples.
the median assessed value of the town. I checked with the assessor, and I'm not doing the numbers that you are quoting, but the median household was 287 here in Richmond. So, and understanding what is in a report and what is being referred to, you have to look and understand. Our median income or our median household assessment wasn't the 319 that's quoted there. It was less than that report.
So I just wanted to add a comment too, that 80% of the town's budget is for the school system. And the voters approved an increase in the school budget. I'm wondering if, you know, people are taking that into consideration when the school budget goes up substantially, as it is 80% of the town's budget. It's going to affect the town's budget. It's going to affect your taxes. So when people voted, they made that choice. We can't reverse that as the council. So that being said,
Mr. President, I guess one more comment. I understand what you're saying, is very valid, what you just said, and I agree with you 100%. But this is just a breakdown, just on the municipal side. This does not take into account the school portion of the tax revenue that we have to collect. But if you look at the town budget, again, it's right there in black and white. In 2018, our town budget.
I gotta hold you to that
$5.5
because
million.
we're just repeating.
Well, no, but it went up 38% because if you look at the town budget this year, in fiscal year 2023, it's 7.7 million. Just do the math. It's up 38%.
So, Mr. Reynolds, would you like to?
I think my question was answered, but I just wanted to confirm that the 9% is over the 6 years. It's not 9% per year. It's 9% over 6 years.
Right.
Correct.
It's about 1.5% per year.
And that's below the rate of
It
inflation.
Yeah, it was from approximately 18.6 million in levy to 20.4 million in levy.
Some things are going to affect that in the future. Like, for example, because we did not pass the budget this year and we had to revert to last year's numbers, next year's numbers are going to be higher. So, you know, these are things that every action has a consequence. And virtually every action has a contribution to a tax increase. And, you know, there's no easy button that we can press. and all of a sudden make taxes go down 10% across the board. If we could, I would have done it a long time ago. I pay taxes too. I don't like paying taxes. But anyway, thank you very much, Laura, for your report. And again, congratulations for the board you won. The Conservation Commission report, James Turek.
That would be me, Jim Turek, Chair of the Conservation Commission on behalf of the commission this evening. So if you had a chance to review the short report we submitted, we just wanted to inform the council of what was completed. So just to take a step back, so the audience also knows, the Conservation Commission put together 2 grant applications this spring to try to secure money for the Beaver River Park, which is a public park that people hopefully are using and enjoying off Beaver River Road. And so we were awarded 2 small grants, one being to try to manage the grassland at the site, which is a very important, relatively rare habitat type that's in within the state of Rhode Island, including Richmond. And so we got that grant. And so the money went to hire a contractor to do some of the removal of the woody invasive plants there, which is very important, maintaining the grassland so it works correctly, and also helps out with public access and use. So just wanted you to be, we wanted you to be aware of this, and also to compliment the Department of Public Works. Those guys put in the in-kind match, which actually helps build capacity for getting these grants. And although it wasn't a very big grant, it was very impactful to get part of the work done. And the work, of course, contributes to some of the goals and objectives of our comprehensive plan. And it also helps demonstrate the value of our aquifer overlay district work that we recently passed. And so I wanted you to be aware of that. And secondly, we had the second award, which is actually to put 2 educational signs up, within the park itself, and also the allow the public to have a better understanding of how these systems work. And so we are in the process still working on these 2 signs. They'll be similar to what you see if you go over to the Heritage Trail. And so they're high quality signs that help provide some good public education. The last thing I would just say though, so we still have work to do at the park to try to maintain the grassland. And so we would expect that there is going to be needs on an annual basis. So there could be a cost. We would like to limit the cost by having, again, either getting grants, or perhaps other ways to look at it would be to have community service work by just part of our community, getting people to come out for a day and actually help do some of that work. And so I
think that's a great idea.
Yeah, so I think the Conservation Commission is very optimistic that we can help do some of this work and therefore minimize our expenditures. But I sure hope the town council has a great understanding of the value of trying to maintain our public properties, because they're extremely important for the public to be there and be able to use them. And they're great assets to our town. So anyway, that was, I don't know if anybody has any questions, but we're not asking for any money tonight.
Rich, then yourself.
Thanks, Mike. Jim, I was speaking with somebody today and they said something and I've never heard of it before. And I wanted to ask you, it's called goat scaping. Have you ever heard of this?
Yeah, people are using goats to try to maintain properties with invasive plants. And so they often feed on all kinds of non-native as well as native, but that's a tough situation on public properties. Because they're pretty indiscriminate what they eat. They'll eat the good stuff and the bad stuff. Okay. So we want to hang on to good stuff, good plants. So that's probably not the right thing to do there.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
People do use them. I mean, and in the right place, they probably do well.
Yeah, they said it's a two like you go over it twice, like you do it one season, then you come back and you do it again, and they have at it.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, my question kind of spins off from Councilman Hussein is, how do you control then those invasive grasses? What is your mode of action with that? Which you work best?
We're not focused too much on the grasses or the herbaceous plants. We're focused on these woody plants that grow way too big. And so the way we have treated them is we cut them and then we put a simple herbicide on the stumps, if you will, to keep them from growing back. That was part of the grant. So we need to have hired a licensed professional to do that work. So that's where some of the cost is going to come in future years. It's not a lot of money. It was $1,000 to take care of that, but these are the way you control those plants. And there isn't a lot of other choices. These plants are not going to go away. And so it's part of our world that we deal with, what we try to do in a good constructive management. And I should mention that last year, we also had a grant where we actually had a management plan put together for Beaver Park. So it's not only for invasive plant management, but it's also for public access. So it's comprehensive in that to put a good value into how the site is used by the public and making it a good habitat for wildlife. And so I think that was a great step forward for us. And so we want to follow that plan. And we just want the Conservation Commission just wants to be aware that this work is happening. There's ways to minimize costs, but we want to keep doing it into the future on an annual basis. So we don't want to just do it one time and then walk away.
I think the point that you brought up of public involvement, though, we're a small town. Small towns get together and they do things together. A grant's great, but throwing money at something with lack of public involvement takes away the appreciation that the public has for this. So I would be very much on board. If you have a plan for public involvement, I'm on it.
Okay.
So, thank you very much.
Okay.
One thing.
Okay.
Mr. Reynolds is in the audience and he's a big Troop 1 connection. The Boy Scouts are always looking for projects that might be something where you give them the ability to have the lead and then they basically have the volunteers of the town tell them what to do. It gives them that leadership ability. It's just another thought, another idea.
It would be a great Eagle project.
That's what I'm saying.
Or 10.
Or 10. Exactly. Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay. Next, we have appointments and resignations. Resignation of Ray Fliot from the Richmond Preservation Land Trust and the Economic Development Commission.
Mr. President, move to accept Ray Fliot's, Mr. Fliot's resignation from both commissions and with extreme regret.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? That being said, how do you vote?
Aye.
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 Okay, the second is a request from Eileen Burton for appointment to the Richmond Preservation Land Trust, term expiration date December 31st, 2027. Is Eileen here?
Move to approve.
Would you like to say anything or just, you don't have to if you don't want to. I'm just, yeah.
My name's Eileen Burton, Richmond, and I've lived in Richmond for 28 years, raised my 2 children here. I've always been interested in environmental causes and conservation of what we have now here and what we need to protect, and recently retired teacher of 35 years. So never before had the time to really volunteer too much, although I did. So now I do, and I'd like to start locally. And I think with my education background, I'd like to see some of these properties be more accessible and also be involved in some public education, maybe some kids programming or
Nice.
getting kids out in nature.
Great. And thank you very much for introducing yourself.
Mr. President, move to approve.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'd like to ask you a question first. Before we, before we
You
vote.
just sat down.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
What was that?
I just want to ask you a quick question.
Okay.
Have you gone to any meetings prior to your appointment? So you
I have.
feel very comfortable and?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Nice.
How do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Excellent. New business. I've decided to take this agenda item, and what I would like to do is, my first step, I would like to ask my Councilor Colasanti if he'd like to make a statement, and then I'd like to file the letter without further discussion.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a statement too.
All right. And we'll have a discussion about it, I suppose. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to respond to the letter. I'd like to read this into the minutes, please. I'll give you a copy, Aaron. It is my passion to be an advocate for the people who are having a hard time making ends meet in these trying times. We are in an inflationary period that is even worse than what we experienced in the 1970s. I truly feel for those that are in their retirement years and still have to work as hard as they did in their early 30s and 40s. And I truly feel for the young families as well, struggling to make ends meet. As a father of 6, I get this. Married young, my wife and I have never forgotten our humble beginnings. So when I recently saw a member of the public scoffing when I brought out the fact that Richmond has the second highest tax burden in the state, yes, that disturbed me. And I do become indignant when I see that level of callousness. I will not back down from pushing back against high taxes and doing all I can to promote fiscal conservatism. What is in the best interest of our town and its residents is that we on this council try and work together on issues. I am convinced each one of us can bring something different to the table. And instead of trying to kill certain councilors' initiatives, we should take full advantage of each other's talents to benefit those that we were elected to serve. I believe that together, and I mean this, together, we can find new ways to work together as the council to improve the lives of our town residents.
Thank you. And I just wanted to respond to that I on a number of occasions talked about our council working together. And the letter refers to conduct which makes it difficult to work together. And so that's what I was hoping would be addressed, and it wasn't. But it is a matter of shouting out, interrupting, making inflammatory statements that were matters of concern. When you say the town is heading for the rocks, you know how many phone calls I got on that? I mean, we just can't be making those kind of statements when there's no basis, in fact, for it. And it's inflammatory. It damages our ability to entice developers into the town, and it damages our ability to work as a council on common goals. So if we can avoid the interruptions, the inflammatory statements, it would make working together a lot easier. And so Helen, would you?
I believe that all of us serving on the town council ran for office to serve all the residents of the town and to serve God. For myself, I was raised in a family of 9 children. We were poor. My mother worried for years that we would not be able to hold on to the house. When I married, we were also poor, and I worried that we would not be able to hold on to the house. Thanks be to God, our health held out long enough for us to pay for our house and to save for retirement. I still work part-time. I'm very lucky that my job did not relocate to another country, that I was healthy, and that I learned how to budget money, live frugally, and save. My current worry is for the older residents of Richmond who struggle to pay for food, medicine, heat, mortgage, and taxes. My worry is also for young families who want to own a home and struggle with all the expenses involved with that. When I consider ways to reduce the tax burden for Richmond residents, the only viable means I have found is to increase economic development in the parts of town that are designated for this. This appears to be where our working as a team begins to be troubled. All 5 of us ran on a platform of economic development. We voted to put money aside to support economic development, and some members of the town council voted to take the money back. I believe that we all want our residents to be able to remain in Richmond, whether young or old. There had to be some reason to take the money intended for economic development back. My guess is that some members of the town council have a vision for the town that they have not shared. It would help a lot if they would share their vision. Mr. Reddish's letter criticizing Mr. Colasanti for getting upset. No wonder Mr. Colasanti feels frustrated because he has 6 children, and I'm sure he would like to have them be able to afford to live in the town. And not to mention there are some other members of the town council have also raised their voices, their bodies, and their arms. So we just need to talk again about the vision that each of us has for the town. And apparently people have a different idea about how to get there. So I would like to have the members of the town council share with each other what those means are of how to get to the vision. Because I believe all of our goals are good ones.
I believe so too. And I thank you for the letter, and I wanted to respond to that before I go to the
Mr.
public.
President,
Yes,
I have something to say too, but you can all
okay,
yield.
I just wanted to, yeah, I think all 5 of us ran to help the people in the town. And I reiterate what I said when Councilor Colasanti finished speaking. It isn't our goals, it isn't our objectives, it isn't what our passions are. It's that when the passions get the best of us and we engage in arguments with people in the public, arguments with fellow councilors, raise our voice, repeat ourselves over and over when the points have been made. It's behavior, it's conduct. It isn't vision, it isn't focus, it's conduct. And I will compliment you. You always act like a lady. You don't interrupt, you're not rude, you don't insult people, you don't rehash things that happened months and months ago. And I appreciate that. That being said, I'd like to go to Sam.
Sure. In my opinion, the continued aggressive and passive aggressive behavior displayed by my colleague is towards fellow councilors, town staff, residents, and guests is unnecessary, unproductive, and unacceptable. We agree that action needs to be taken regarding the tax rate and other initiatives, and this will take time. As we get there, all differences must be addressed with integrity, civility, and a commitment to doing what's best for Richmond. Thanks.
I 100% agree with that. Rich, do you have anything to add?
Be positive, be polite, be productive, and be professional. It's very simple. For 3 Ps that I had the last term and the term before, and I added one more, professional, for this one. And I think that if those can be had, then things can go swimmingly forward, as long as the vision is for the town, for the people of the town, not for ideology, not for partisan, not for one person or one group of people's ideas or goals. It has to be for the entire town. That's it.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the public. I'm going to try and limit people's comments to 3 minutes. It's just being polite to everyone in the room. So Catherine. Let's see.
I'll make this brief because I don't want to belabor. I believe even President Trim, with all due respect, your characterizations, I don't agree with them, and we can respectfully disagree on that. I will say that Ms. Wilcox, there are many things that I could bring up. I don't see the use of it right now. Mr. Matheny, things I could make public right now I don't, as much as I thought of it, I have a signed statement by someone. I think I'm just gonna leave it at that right now. We have to show you later. I would just like to see people stop trying to vilify people that have differences of opinions, and for you to all try to see the good in one another and allow each other's talents to be used for the good of this town. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who's interested in speaking? Ma'am,
Yeah. Not that young, I keep telling you that. Excuse me. Joan Kent, I live in Richmond Hills. Good evening to the council members and the taxpayers. All of you have been very, very respectful every time I've come up here to speak. Even though I may have differences of opinions and views, you've respected me. Sometimes something that's been occurred to me at meetings and have upset me. Some council members have been condescending, disrespectful to each other and to the taxpayers. Also, some of the taxpayers have been just respectful to the council and to other taxpayers. Well, at the first meeting I attended, Mr. Colasanti addressed the council and we the taxpayers and said we must be treated with some respect with each other. Our police chief has several times stood up and talked to the taxpayers about being respectful and following procedure and protocol. I know everyone is passionate about what they want for their town. But sometimes we forget to remember we are all in this together. I hope we can move on, agree to be kind, respectful to each other. Because nothing can be achieved if we are divided. And the problems and the issues we face will not be resolved. I thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
very well said.
God bless
Thank
you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Are we good? Anyone online? Okay. So at this point, I would like to ask that that letter be filed and move on to the next item, which is discussion and consideration of proposed amendments to the town council rules and procedure that we just discussed.
This is the amendment that you requested at your last meeting.
It's the time constraint
Yes.
one.
It says no town council meeting shall continue past 9 PM unless a majority of the town council members present vote to allow the meeting to continue.
Oh, excellent.
Mr. President,
Yes.
it also strikes the language that applicants need to be present.
That's because it's in the addendum that you adopted last.
All right, perfect.
Okay,
Mr. President,
yes.
motion to approve.
Okay, any further discussion amongst council? That being said, we'll take a vote. Helen, how do you vote?
Aye.
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 Okay. So the second one is, the next agenda item is item number 3. Discussion and consideration of the procedure regarding distribution of executive session materials and minutes. So we have subtopic A, a copy of email from the Rhode Island Attorney General's Office, Open Government from Councilor Wilcox. So would you like to take a moment to discuss that?
I mean, if you have any questions, you can ask, but at the last meeting, there was it says it in the email that I forwarded at the last meeting. It was mentioned that there was a ruling on this, so I wanted to have, Mr. President, you gave me the power. I wanted to just see if I could find that ruling, just so I could learn more, because I just love to learn. And if there is information out there, I want to be able to read it. And the Attorney General's office basically came back and said that they don't I don't know, in lack of better terms, care, how we deal with our minutes, as long as we're going into executive session properly and all of that is, but receiving the council minutes prior to that meeting, reading them, giving them back to the clerk in the manner in which we do, they don't really have an opinion either way.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Okay, well, I thank you for that, and it looks like Councilor Colasanti has some sort of,
Yeah, on November 22nd, my wife contacted the Attorney General's office because they were going to be having a problem getting their minutes in their packets. So she notified them, and it is from Adam Roach. And he said, I am in receipt of your email sent to this office yesterday pertaining to sealed minutes. As indicated below, I would imagine that an individual who is not considered a member of a public body until they have assumed office. Upon taking office, a member of a public body would be privy to non-public matters discussed in executive session, including ongoing litigation, just as any other member of the public body would be. And after she mentioned this to the school committee solicitor, he said, fine, you can get your minutes in hard copy. And when I was on the council before, we always got copies of the hard copies of the executive session minutes well before. So that way we could really go over them, disseminate them, and make any changes that we would like. And that's our responsibility. Even the fact that we go into executive session and we come out and we seal executive session minutes, we can still tell somebody exactly what happened in executive session. So whether or not we get a hard copy of the minutes or not, it doesn't matter because it stays within this body. And like I said, it's just protocol in getting the hard copies. I know that's not the way Richmond has done it for a few years, but other towns do it that way. The school committee does do it that way. And I would like the minutes in my packet.
with regard to that letter, would you provide it to?
Yeah.
To Aaron? So I think what I'd like to do is have the council vote on whether or not we want to change the minutes to the executive session policy, or whether we want to keep it as it is. And so,
President, can I make just one comment before that?
certainly,
If council members, if some of them don't want to accept hard copies of the executive session minutes, that's fine. I think it should be, something like this should be, I think, under the guise of whether or not the council person wants them or not. And like I said, if 3 out of the 5 of us don't want the hard copies, that's fine. I would just leave it at that. If you don't feel comfortable getting the hard copies, that's fine. I do.
Mr. President.
yes.
I would just like to ask for clarification because we do receive hard copies before a meeting. When it's on our agenda, we come here, we get our hard copy of the minutes. We open our envelope, we read it, put it back and give it back to Erin. So maybe there's some kind of miscommunication between what's being asked because we do get hard copies.
I think I'll give my view on it. I like the way it is because it doesn't let executive session minutes out of the building. And that's the whole crux of the entire thing, is to take very sensitive information, allow the elected counselors to view it, discuss it, and allow it to be kept within the building. It doesn't leave, it doesn't go out to the public, it doesn't end up in the Beaver River Facebook page or the Westerly Sun or in somebody's garage in a cardboard box. So as far as I'm concerned, I like how we do things. And I feel that the policy is a good policy because it saves the fear of that kind of information getting out and about.
Excuse me, Mr. President, during COVID, the council members were emailed all executive session minutes. And if it's that crucial, then even during COVID, they could have been instructed to come in, view the minutes and then put them back in the envelope and then give them back to the clerk. If it's that crucial that they stay in this building.
I feel it is, so.
But during the whole time of COVID, those executive session minutes were emailed to every single town council member.
Rich?
COVID was a very unique situation, which everyone understands. But the comment by Mr. Calasanti stating that if he goes home and he opens his mouth and says anything to anyone that's his, he's able to do that. That's the intent. That takes the integrity of the process and destroys it. The whole process of having an executive session meeting is because the information that's being presented and being discussed is privy to us and only to us. And having the fact that the words came out of Mike's mouth, that he can go and say it to anybody if he wishes to, that scares me. I would not give it.
Excuse me, Counselor, it's not what I said.
Point of order.
Please just, everybody speaks.
To us. The fact that we get our executive session minutes, like Sam said, and we read them, and then we hand them back to Erin, is sufficient enough because we've already discussed it. So you were there, you knew about it. And if you weren't at the meeting, then you get a hard copy, you get to read it, come 10 minutes before class starts, read it, hand it back in. But it's the integrity of the process, and the integrity of the information, and to know that you've been bound by something and you need to hold that secret. There's people who depend on those pieces of information not leaving this building. And there's some important stuff that we've discussed. And that's the most important part. They shouldn't leave this building. The fact that COVID happened. We did what we had to do to survive, to keep the business of the town going. And that's when when COVID ended, it ended. And there was no more discussion of it, no more forwarding of the executive session meeting minutes to members, because it no longer was necessary. Because it was no longer necessary. Now we're back at normal. So let's go back to normal and keep the executive session minutes the way that they are. Because there's no need for anybody else to hear the information that we know.
Mr. President,
Yes.
to take action on that, what kind of motion would I need? I just need a motion to keep the executive session procedure the way it is.
Yes.
All right, motion to keep the executive session procedure the way it is.
Second.
No further discussion. Catherine?
First of all, we just witnessed a wonderful illustration of how people can misunderstand each other. Mr. Nasini, you're absolutely right. My husband did say, you could do it. And I know, even as he was saying it, I was cringing. I'm like, I know what that sounds like, but I also know what he meant. What he meant, and I understand it, is whether or not something's in writing and you maintain it in your possession, or if you just read it and walk away, you could divulge it to people that you shouldn't. It doesn't mean you should, absolutely you should not. And I know that's right. And yes, as a matter of policy, the school committee does get a printed version of the executive session minutes. I find it very important because, like any other minutes to the meeting, a lot of times you can be in a meeting, but I'm sure you all experience it. You're participating in the meeting, and sometimes it's something you're still thinking of while more conversation ensues. And very well taken minutes, a lot of times you can go back and review them and catch something that you missed. So that's one reason. And I know it's not, I know it is not intentional. Okay, so I'm not gonna assign motives to anyone. But I personally think it's disrespectful to your fellow councilors to think that you can't trust their integrity to keep things private that should be private. And especially in if there's litigation, I know myself, the reason why I submitted that request to the Attorney General's office, because one of the previous school committee members was kind enough to speak to me privately and publicly on my behalf, saying, you know what, I think it would be good for you to be able to get minutes from prior meetings on litigation, so when you walk into your seat as a school committee member, you can get brought up to speed. And I thought that was very polite and respectful for him to look out for me to do that. So that is the purpose of me writing to the Attorney General's office. And when I said that at an onboarding meeting to the attorney on the school committee, he said, yes, I can provide you with those. So that's just a little history. That's just my view.
I just had a question for you. So are you allowed to take the executive session minutes that you receive at a school committee and walk out the door with them?
Yes, and we get them in our packet. So once the minutes have been taken, we get them in our packet, we're able to read them, we have them in our possession. And I think that's really important because I am able to carefully go over them. And this happens where members of our committee will make corrections to the minutes and they'll still point out something, oh, this wasn't quite right. And then our secretary does a wonderful job and she said, oh, okay, yes, we all agree, yep, we'll make that correction. So I find it very important to just do that 10 minutes before a meeting. Ms. Wilcox, I'm very glad that you always have 10 minutes to get here early and you don't know what other people's lives and schedules are like. And I think it would be good to think about others that maybe aren't in the same situation as you. And again, I think it's disrespectful to your fellow council's integrity that you're saying you can't trust them.
I just don't, I personally feel that the process of taking confidential data out of the building is a bad process.
Like I said, if the people have the integrity to keep them private, they will be kept private.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes.
There is flexibility, like 10 minutes is just an estimate, but there is flexibility. We see it on our agenda. Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon. So there's ample time to make plans or request that you come to town and read it in advance and then leave. So although I prefer to come early, when I see executive session minutes, it doesn't mean there aren't other options that could be asked. But another point that I think is being made really isn't on the agenda, and that's about prior minutes. Those are minutes before I was elected. And that's probably another discussion for another day, but that seems to be another thing that's being brought up a lot.
To
just
me,
to say.
to me, I think those, you could, if you wanted to review prior minutes, you'd come to town hall, you'd review them, and then you'd leave them at town hall and you'd go home.
Mhm.
To me, that's, it just preserves the process.
Mr. President, if I may,
Yes.
prior council minutes on ongoing litigation, I think would be disclosed in camera. Minutes that were sealed by a previous council, I don't believe could be reviewed because they're sealed by that body. But I think the legal opinion should be there.
Mr. President, my wife already got that ruling, and the whole thing is when you sit for the first time, either on the school committee or town council, there is always ongoing litigation. And unless you're brought up to speed where you can get those executive minutes from the previous council regarding that particular litigation, it's kind of hard for you to be able to make a decision on what is going on unless you have all those and you can read them. And I know you can probably come here and get them, but you know something, again, I don't have the affordability of the time to come here. This is more than a part-time job. It's almost, even at this point, a full-time job, and I'm not retired. So with that being said, the convenience, and I have the integrity not to go past these executive session minutes around. And especially we have at least 3 or 4 cases of litigation going on right now that other prior councils are going into executive session that is a carryover. It would be nice. That's why my wife got the ruling, so that way she can be privy to all these prior executive session minutes to the previous school committee.
To respond to that, I know that when we were sworn in, that Solicitor Ellsworth sent us copies of all the pending litigation at the time that was going on with the town. So that's different than executive session minutes. Did you have more to?
I was gonna reference the onboarding packet that the solicitor does provide on
Right.
ongoing stuff. And just as a point of depth to this, this is a process that that was recommended to me by a previous town solicitor in a town I worked for over 15 years ago. So this is a practice that was instituted from that. Furthermore, in another town, actually, the solicitor would walk any confidential one by one and take them back. They wouldn't be distributed several copies. So it's something that was recommended to me by the town solicitor previously, and a practice that I've instituted in every town I've worked as the keeper of the record. And once they're sealed, those records are sealed in the vault. And so I do question if the policy would change, what would happen to those minutes of confidentiality after the term. So the reason why the policy is implemented handing back is so that there's one sealed copy and there's no need to collect those back. So that's just some background on the policy and why it's been and why I implemented it that way.
I think it's a very good policy. So we have a vote and I think we're done with the department. How do you go?
We have a vote, we have a motion.
Yeah, we have a
Yeah.
motion and a second, so we have a vote. How do you go? To maintain, the motion was to maintain the current.
Thank you for repeating. I'll say nay.
Yay.
Yes.
Yes.
The current policy is maintained. Now, the second a copy of email from Catherine Conley.
Oh, that was, sorry, Mr. President.
Sure. go
That
ahead.
was just their response back to me. That's not a separate
Okay,
item.
all right, in that regard, I'd like to take the next item, number 4, and I'd like to table that at this time and move on to number 5, which is
You're
the,
gonna do Mr. President, you're gonna do a motion to table?
would you make a motion? I thought that we should discuss the reasoning for that in executive session.
All right, I'll make a motion to table.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 I had a question.
Sure, well, go ahead.
What's the reason for executive session? Like what
It-
ordinance is it under? Because there's only certain reasons we can go into executive session.
Executive session,
So I don't-
only discussing personal issues that you don't want to go out into the public.
Right, but there's a very specific, like, is it litigation? Is it personnel? Is it? And she could probably list way, solicitor can probably list way more than I can, but there's certain reasons and I'll be for it if there's a reason why.
I think the individual in question that still receives a paper packet would rather discuss it with the four of us in private rather than in public.
Respectfully, this has already been discussed publicly.
Yeah, I think it's,
Okay.
I think it could possibly be a disability issue or what have you. So I thought it would be best if it were discussed in executive session.
Okay,
So moving,
Yes or no?
yeah, yes.
okay, so moving on, I'm requesting an authorization for the full payment of the invoice from attorney Larissa for the Purcell versus Clay representation and the town of Richmond.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Discussion.
Oh, okay, yeah, right, discussion.
Can you, excuse me, Mr. President?
She had wanted to
The,
discuss.
the rules have to be for everybody. It should have been, excuse me, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Instead of being a little condescending.
Put it in point of order.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Mr. President.
yeah, Laura,
Just an update, that the total bill, we did get a supplemental bill because there was a July. There was some labor in July, so the total bill now is $22,242.50. The
how much
increase is
it
only
again?
$450.
22,000 what?
$242.50. I didn't want you to prove it. at a different number.
Right. That's why I used payment in full, because I didn't know what the number was.
Mr. President.
Yes,
I brought this up last meeting and asked that we not pay for 2 items because Attorney Larissa was not authorized to do that work. We hired him, I don't actually have the date in front of me, but I believe it was the 25th. He wrote a writ on behalf of Clay Johnson and also attended a school committee meeting, which we did not authorize him to do that. We didn't hire him. We didn't do that. Regardless of the school committee decision, to me, I feel like by paying him, we're setting in a terrible precedent that it's okay for anyone to work for the town without permission, and then they'll just get paid anyway. For example, we want new stop signs, we want Tug Hollow to get paid. Can somebody just go pave that and then come here and say, I did the work, please pay me? So I just feel like procedurally, regardless of what's done, the process needs to be followed. And by paying somebody for work that we didn't authorize them to do, is just setting a bad precedent, not for us in this council, not for the school committee issue, but like 2035 and 2040 and all the years in the future could just go back on that. You signed an affidavit stating that you didn't direct him to file that petition, and that you didn't tell him to go to the school committee meeting, and nobody did that. That's what I have to say. So I'll be voting no.
so, you used an example of someone paving a road and then charging us for it after we give them permission, so when D'Ambra Construction paves a road, they come out before they've been authorized, before they've been hired, before they've been authorized to pave the road. And they spend quite a bit of time estimating, doing surveying, and determining the cost before they come up with a action. So with regard to that, he had to act within a certain amount of time. And I was confident because I was advised that he would be a good co-rental lawyer by our solicitor. I was confident we would hire him. And I said, yeah, let's get moving.
But for clarity, you just stated you hired him prior to the 25th. So I just.
No, I didn't hire, I can't hire
Right,
him.
I mean, that's,
But it was kind of like a road construction company coming to do an estimate. He had to go to the school committee meeting to see what he was dealing with.
Mr. President, I understand your analogy. I think it's a good one. Because after, quite some time, I give out a lot of quotes and I spend the time, go give the quote, sit down with the customer. And there are times you get the job and times you don't. When you do get the job, you're getting paid for your time sitting with them. That's already factored in. So that's basically what he did too. And if we didn't hire him, then he would have known that he would have done that, all right, for the bubble. He was there getting himself prepped, just like I do. When I sit with the customer, I get all my paperwork together, get all the quotes together. And if I get the job, then I just got paid for the time that I put in. If I don't get the job, that's business.
I mean, there was an opportunity, a possibility that he wouldn't have been hired. And in that case, he wouldn't have billed us for that time. But again, it's part of the, when someone is dealing with a very complex issue, there's preparation. You have to reconnoiter what you're doing. You can't just go into something cold. And so I feel that's what was done.
President,
Yes.
I'm gonna ask one question. We paid the other lawyer how much? Was there 2 lawyers that we had to pay?
No, you didn't.
No, we
I know
didn't.
what he's talking about, if I could, Mr. President. The motion's been filed because the attorney for Purcell is seeking to be paid, but that hasn't been decided yet.
Oh.
So we might have to pay more, but it's
Okay.
still pending.
Okay, so
And-
this is the first.
And
This is the first.
Right, that's just
Okay,
Larissa.
sorry, I apologize.
so, and to respond to Counselor Wilcox, he has stated publicly that he will represent the town for no money in that particular case. When with Jessica Purcell seeking legal reimbursement from the town. Yes. Okay, sure.
Council finish.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, Jess Purcell, Richmond. Ms. Wilcox has already addressed the fact that,
Jessica, you should have permissions.
yeah, I'm talking. Can you hear me? Oh. Hi, Jess Purcell. Can you hear me?
Can't hear you, Jessica.
How about now? No.
You don't have any audio.
Can you hear me?
Want to type something
Do you
or?
want to chat it in the box? Or you could call in.
Any luck? No.
Oh, okay, so it's coming through Zoom. You can hear in cyber, it's not coming through us.
Does she want to call in?
Yeah, Jessica, can you call in? Or send it in the chat and I'll read it, because I don't want it third party.
Obviously, Aaron, she can hear you.
Yes. Believes the petition of the quo warranto filed by Larissa was unnecessary. He did not need to file an order to respond.
Anything further?
I did not believe Johnson had given the file.
Is that
Thank
the,
you, Jessica, is that all? He was in possession of the seat and therefore unable to file for his right to seat. Please thumbs up all.
Thank you. And Mr. President,
yes.
one final thought is just that as a town councilor or town council president, we don't have the authority to go to a consultation and then later bill the town for that without permission. So I understand, that many different companies give consultations. It's not limited to lawyers or construction workers or your business, Mr. Costello, but it also is just something that you said they factor in that should be part of the price. And we move on. So I appreciate the debate and trying to sway, but I'm still a no. Thanks.
Mr. President, one last thing. I've talked with Attorney Larissa, and he's a man of great integrity. And being in business for a lot of years, I don't do this, but I've been exposed to other businesses. He could have very easily have taken that and padded it back into the amount after he was elected. So as far as I'm concerned, that shows the integrity of this man, that he billed according to the exact date that he did the work. Because Mr. Larissa, again, he's been around the block a lot of times, and he could have put that money into the back end of his fee to the town. So I give him kudos for being honest, for being forthright, and he is a man of high integrity.
So we have a motion. Do we have a motion to, at this point, I've lost, yes, okay. So how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
The next item is A request from Councilor Wilcox for discussion and consideration of amendments or additions to the ordinance 2.20.040 appointment, probation and layoff.
Right, so there's been recent conflict regarding procedure in hiring personnel. So this was a question that was on the ballot in November and has been quite a source of contention for some. The problem as I see it is there really is no written procedure for onboarding, leaving people with different ideas of what should be done and what should be followed. So my goal with this is to empower the town employees to do their job and vet applications and bring to council the recommendation, and we can approve it per the charter. So I want to see ordinances that kind of align with what their current internal procedure is. And once we have that, we can review, discuss, and see if we have any changes or amendments from there. So then we can see exactly what the town administrator and the department heads want to have, and adjust to, ensure not only transparency, but council's final approval.
Well, we recently modified our charter to clarify this somewhat, so that people have spoken, the people who voted for the charter and worked on the charter. And I agree that the language needs to be clarified so that we can hire and fire smoothly within the town.
Mr. President? may I
Yes.
speak?
Sure.
I agree with you also. We do need to make clarification because it does say, it says, Town Charter, Article 3, Section 4C says the town council shall have the authority to appoint and remove all town employees, including department heads. And I understand the town charter also says in Article 4, Section 1B and Article 4, Section 1B1, it shall be the responsibility of the town administrator to submit to the town council a list of qualified candidates for department directors. The town council may make an appointment from among the candidates submitted, may ask the town administrator to submit additional candidates, or may ask the town administrator to re-advertise the position. So the members of the town council chose last time not to ask any questions. But to me, when you present someone and that's it, and we become a rubber stamp. And I don't think that the residents of this town intended that we would be a rubber stamp.
Mr. President,
Just a second. We have Attorney Reynolds here, and I don't know if he'd be willing to speak on this, but he was part of the Charter Commission. Right, Mark would.
Point of order, though, Mr. President, we usually have council discussion before we open it up to the public.
Right, I just wanted to see if he'd even be willing to be put on the spot regarding that.
I would be willing to be put on the spot. Mr. Reddish was on the Charter Review Commission as well. Perhaps he would want to be put on the spot as well.
But again,
I'd be happy to add to the discussion.
Okay, all right, so to go back, go ahead.
Mr. President, we employed 250 people at one time, and this is all new to me on how the hiring and firing is done. And we had never once had a department head pick and choose who their replacement would be.
I just got to interrupt you. You said we employ, we don't, the town doesn't.
No, I'm talking about me.
Okay, you're about that.
Right. We employed at one time 250 people, and the department head did not come and handpick their replacement. We as the owners would never relinquish our responsibility to make that decision, because the buck stops with us. It doesn't stop with the employee, because however things go, whether they go good or bad, it's always on the owner's shoulders. So with that being said, you do have a little bit of conflicting language in the town charter. And I have more than once said that the town council, and even stated the specific numbers, that the town council is the hire and firing body. And again, if the future councils or the future residents of this town want to go to the extent of actually changing the form of government where it's just a town administrator that gets elected and there's no more town council, then that's fine. They can choose that route. But in present day right now, the way the language is in the town charter, it's the town council, it's the hire and fire authority. And I do have the expertise and I do have the know-how to sit down and interview somebody and pick the best person for the job. And I refuse to relinquish my responsibility. That's not why the people voted for me. And I won't quite say rubber stamp, but I'm almost right there. I refuse to be that.
Okay, just a comment on your comment was that we aren't owners, we're elected officials, we aren't owners of the town. And so therefore proceeding processes are slightly different. Did you?
I did,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
President, but I'll yield to Rich because he hasn't spoken yet.
No.
All right, cool. When writing ordinances, I think it's important to not only think of who's sitting at this table and who has the expertise at this table, but next council and future councils, because again, I didn't put the charter on the agenda. I put the ordinance on the agenda. And when we change that, it's going to still be in effect, you know, after we're done, after we're out, and we may have different people sitting here who maybe don't have that expertise or maybe do. So when we're writing this, it's not solely about our experiences. My idea was really to look at that appointment and where it says, you know, employees shall be hired on qualifications, preferences, blah, 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 all that. All it says is employees shall be hired in compliance with Article 3, Section 4C of the Home Rule Charter. And that's just what Ms. Helen read, where it just says we have the authority to do it. So what I kind of want to do here is just have the town employees, again, sorry that I'm repeating myself, is just outline, maybe create an A, B, C that just goes down the list of what they do in a procedure so that we can, you know, not be a rubber stamp, still be the final approval per the charter, but have some kind of procedure that they can follow so it's not a surprise. Are there questions going to be asked? We hired many people. We hired a few people in December, a few people in January. Wasn't really a problem until the electrical inspector came up. There was, you know, an issue with the department head last time, but today we hired somebody and it was just no questions were asked. So it just seems inconsistent. So I'm just looking for consistency, not for this council. Well, yes, for this council, but also future councils. So our employees can do their job without questioning if they're doing it right.
Mr. President, one new point. There was the occasion of the wellness director, when the wellness director was being interviewed. And you know, you saw fit to sit in the interview process because that was important to you. So with that being said, I would have liked to have been in that interview process too. But the point is, you thought it was important, and I think it is important that we do, especially when it tweaks us in a particular way on maybe the department that, you know, we're looking to replace the department head. It may not float your boat to sit in on an interview with maybe with me, but you know, you saw fit to sit in on the wellness director's interview.
Would you like to know why?
Well, no, I
think it's
know,
important
being
that you know why.
disrespectful. No, I'm not. I'm just saying it. I thought it was important, and I don't blame you for wanting to sit in there.
But
Yeah.
because your statements been made, I'm going to explain. There was a lot of angst and ire about hiring her. I was very concerned that the interview process and the hiring process would be disrupted by those people who are very much against emotionally charged, interrupting, yelling out, shouting out, getting angry because we were going to hire this, we were considering hiring this person. So I didn't really go there to interview. I just went there to kind of assure in my own mind that the process did not get subverted.
Well, Mr. President, I think that what you did was a very good idea. And I think when the administrator gets to the point that she has narrowed down the candidates, that one or two or three of us is able to also sit in an interview with that person before it comes. Can't be three of us, because then we'd have a rolling quorum, it'd only be two. So that it wouldn't be a surprise when the person came here to be voted on.
Any more comments from the council?
Sure, real quick, I think it's like double the effort to have a council member sit in an interview and then also approve it here. But I did like the idea of executive session for
Yeah.
hiring. I know other towns may do that. But again, back to the point of the agenda item, I'm just gonna put it in form of motion so we can put it to a vote is, I guess I'll move to ask our town solicitor and our town administrator to work together on a draft ordinance for appointments, probations, and layoffs.
Okay, so you've made your motion.
Yep, do I need a second?
Okay,
I'd like to make an amendment.
I'd like to make one more comment prior. Okay, so with the further discussion, I am going to ask two members of the Charter Commission. My concern is this. We had an issue with the school committee appointment because we had a charter that was different than the state law governing the school. We lost. It cost money. Now we have a charter that might be conflicting with other things in the town. I would like everything to line up and fit like a puzzle without, yes,
The charter doesn't conflict with anything you're talking about.
okay.
I don't think the question is whether or not the town council actually makes the appointments. The question is what happens before the town council makes the appointments. What the process is.
Right.
And it would be possible to draft an amendment to the code of ordinances that established a particular process without interfering in any way with what the charter language is.
Okay, in that case,
And I think that that's what you were asking for.
Exactly why. Thank you for wording it the way they can.
okay, I don't think we need any further comment, and I think we can vote on your motion.
Nothing more to say.
So how do you vote?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye.
excellent.
Now we just have to figure out what kind of process you want.
Well, that's why my motion, okay, I just say what she wants and then we figure it out. Okay, you're good.
But we'll work on it and we'll give you some options and you can take a look at the options and decide what you want.
Okay, communications, petitions, proclamations, and resolutions from other Rhode Island cities and towns.
Second.
All those in favor?
Wait a minute.
No. Discussion.
Yeah. Number J2. I'd like to talk about that resolution from the town of Westfield proposing Senate Bill 2023-0134 and House Bill 2023 H5201 relating to relief of injured firefighters and police officers. I think, well, the resolution was in everybody's packet, but the law that is being presented is saying if either of them get high blood pressure or heart disease, that's considered to be a disability. And I agree with Westerly that we should support this resolution. So I guess
Mr. President.
It's already been enacted.
Really?
And just to clarify, usually we hold them
The
for
mail
a
from
few.
Westerly is very slow.
Excuse me.
What's that?
The mail from Westerly is very slow.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Mr. President,
Just wait, please.
typically with these items, we pull them for a future discussion or file them. We don't usually have discussion like as it's going here. That's what it says.
It's unfortunate that it's already been passed because I don't think it was right-headed to do.
Mr. President, yes, I was going to pull J2 for further discussion.
But there's no point.
But there's no point. So in case.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. How do you vote?
Aye.
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 Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. those in favor?
Hi.
Aye.